In the Holy Quran, in chapter 22, verse 77, humanity is commanded, and those specifically who believe and have accepted faith are commanded, as the verse proclaims, O you who believe, bow down and prostrate yourselves, and serve your Lord, and do good, that you may indeed prosper. One finds here then a commandment to humanity to render itself into total submission to the will of God. This has been a commandment given to humanity and mankind from time immemorial. When one looks at the fundamental aspects of the Muslim or Islamic form of prayer called Salah, one would see that one is able to identify parallels in terms of how prophets and previous prophets had generally prayed. For example, if one is to look at the fact that in Islamic form of worship, the prostration, what we would call the sujood, is a fundamental element of the Islamic form of prayer. Without the sujood, the Islamic form of worship, the salah, is incomplete. Yet you see that when one has to have a cursory glance at the Old Testament, specifically these elements, which are indeed intrinsic to the Islamic form of worship, are in fact writ large in terms of how all prophets of God prayed. If one looks, for example, in the book of Genesis, commencing with the very first book of the Old Testament, chapter 17, verse 3, in describing Abraham in performing his act of worship, it speaks about Abraham fell on his face and prayed to God. In the book of Numbers, chapter 20, verse 6, we read the verse and declaration about Moses, Aaron, and their sons falling upon their faces and praying to God. In the book of Joshua, chapter 5, verse 14, Joshua fell on his face and prayed to God. In the book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 42, Elijah is described as casting himself on the ground and placing his head between his knees, exactly as a Muslim would do in his particular form of worship. And not lastly, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 39, in the very last stages of Jesus' life on earth, as we are given to understand, in the Garden of Gethsemane, we are told that he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed to God and said, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass away from me, nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. In other words, submitting his will to the will of the Almighty God. One of the key aspects of Islam is this intrinsic jealous idea of monotheism. The Quranic creed, the Shahada, the declaration of faith, is that I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except one God, Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the last and final messenger of God. This is further enumerated in what can be described as the touchstone of theology in Surah 112, where we read, say the proclamation, He is God, the one and only, God, the eternal, the absolute. He does not beget, nor is he begotten, and there is none like unto him.
If you ask me, why do I stand here so unafraid of everything around me? Proudly I would say, I am a Muslim. If you ask her, why does she dress that way, all covered up in a world that gives it all away? Proudly she would say, I am a Muslim. دين الإسلام ديني والعرض بغير ديني محمد اللي هديني نور الإيمان. دين الإسلام ديني والعرض بغير ديني محمد اللي هديني نور الإيمان. If you ask me, surely this cannot be. You give your wealth so free, and you say your life is charity. It ain't hard to see, I am a Muslim. If you ask him, why does it hurt so when he sees injustice, even though it's folks he doesn't know. Tears in his eyes, he says, I am a Muslim. دين الإسلام ديني والأعظم غير ديني محمد اللي هديني نور الإيمان. دين الإسلام ديني والأعظم غير ديني محمد اللي هديني نور الإيمان. If you ask her, why doesn't she cry? There's no one by her side. She's the only one that's left behind. Patiently she sighs, I am a Muslim. If you ask him, why does he still pray 5 times a day when so many others have strayed? Smiling he would say, I am a Muslim. دين الإسلام ديني والأعظم غير ديني محمد اللي هديني